President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration is having a negative impact and effect on the agriculture industry. The loss of workers causing problems for farmers out west.
It certainly doesn't help when you're already facing a labor shortage to now have your current employees that you generally depend on, not being sure if they want to come to work or not because of those potential, threats, I guess, to them.
That was a segment on Fox News, not MSNBC, not ABC News, not CBS. That was Fox News, and who you just heard from in the very beginning was Bret Baier, who reported on farm workers in the Pacific Northwest who are afraid to show up to work to do their jobs due to ICE raids. Here's more.
When ICE raided a California farm in June, rounding up illegal immigrants, the ripple effect has led to worker shortages at farms all the way up the West Coast. Some cherry growers in Oregon and Washington State say they had to leave more than a third of their crop on the trees. The USDA reports 42% of farm workers are undocumented. Other estimates say it's at least 2/3, but that could be changing. Just about every worker in this apple orchard in Brewster, Washington is a legal foreign guest worker on a 6-month contract through the government's H-2A program.
I don't know that I would call it a silver bullet. It allows an employer to bring in a legal workforce to work on their property.
Use of the H-2A program has been growing steadily for years and now sits at 380,000 guest farm workers, a 300% increase since 2010. But most small and mid-sized growers still can't afford it, leaving them at risk of losing their workforce and ultimately their farms.
So I understand the visa plan, the visa idea, which in a perfect world that would work out great, because look, the fact of the matter is when it comes to farming, that is a very difficult job, and farms historically, even in cases where they increase wages, provide, some pretty impressive benefits, have a hard time attracting American workers. It's just the truth. It's not because Americans are lazy, it's because Americans want other jobs. It is what it is. So what you could do is have a more robust visa program where you bring in, immigrants to work the crops or the harvests, and at least who's in the country. And by the way, since they're here legally, they also have recourse if they're being mistreated by their employer, which is an added benefit that I think is important and oftentimes overlooked. But if it's a costly system, and the smaller farms are not going to be able to stay afloat as a result of that costly system, well, we've got a problem there, and I don't know how you fix it. I don't know if you do it through some sort of, federal government subsidy that helps, bolster the resources of the smaller farms, because the last thing I want is the smaller farms to go under and have the situation where, the agriculture industry, which is really dominated by a few players, becomes even more, in power in this economic system. Anyway, what do you think about this, Jay?
Okay, so first of all, I'm surprised that the number is that low. That of the farm workers, it's only 42 to 67% are undocumented immigrants. I would have guessed 98%, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Because every time we've done a story about how they did a raid in Georgia or Alabama and they took away all the undocumented immigrants. This is pre-Trump, right? They would live to regret it, and they'd bring them right back, right? Because they could, no matter what they put the price at, the wage at, people would go there, work half a day and quit, work half a day and quit, right? And so they could. So it turns out though, when you look into it, now I understand why. Because the rest are not necessarily American citizens at all, okay? In fact, the great majority are not. What they're doing now is they're giving temporary work permits for people from Mexico and Latin America and Jamaica and other places, and they're actually paying for them for their travel, and they're paying them $20 an hour. Okay, yeah, at $20 an hour, you can get people from other countries to come and do it legally here. And then I think, why haven't we been doing that from day one?
Yeah.
Right? If it turns out really Americans can't do it at a price where we could then, pay for that fruit. So they'll say, okay, the fruit, the vegetables, et cetera, that they're picking, now because you're paying 20 bucks, et cetera, it's gonna cost a little bit more. I say, I get it. That's what it costs. That's what it costs without slave labor.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with it,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, me too, yes.
So then I'll eat less, whatever it is, we'll adjust, right?
I don't want to eat less.
Okay, but whatever it is, I don't, if the price of having that be really low is that we have an undocumented immigrant system in this country that's totally broken and lawless and chaotic, etc. I don't want to pay that price. I'd rather pay a couple of cents more for lettuce or whatever it might be, okay? So for God's sake, can we get this to sanity now that most Americans agree? Now close to 80% of Americans agree. Let's do a sane pathway to citizenship, right? So we'll give you the exact numbers in a second, right?
Yeah.
But as Anna reads those numbers for you guys, I want you to keep in mind that if you watch cable news at any moment in time, you'll think that Americans are at loggerheads. Like half of us want nothing but undocumented immigrants, and the other half hate undocumented immigrants and never want them to have a pathway to citizenship. Now, find out the reality.
Yeah, well, let me just comment on that quickly because the conversation is dominated by the two extremes. Haven't you noticed that? I mean, the people who have a nuanced view on any policy, like put immigration aside, literally any other policy, anyone who wants to have a nuanced conversation about it, they're not represented in the media. It's always the cranks, it's always the extremes on both sides of the political spectrum.
Let me say two more things about that before we give you the facts on this story. Look, Anna, you're right, and it's not just cable news, online media too, right? And so, oh my God, take the most extreme person on the left and take the most extreme person on the right and talk about them nonstop. Oh, look at how extreme the other side is. Yeah, I know, because you picked a dude from the very end of the spectrum. Same thing on the other side. Oh, look at this guy, this lady with the purple hair and blah, blah, blah. And she believes these crazy things and doesn't even think Sydney Sweeney's hot, right? Oh, that's all the left, right? Okay, and that's all the right. And have we been guilty of that? Yes. Okay, because sometimes things are so extreme and it drives you crazy and you point it out and go, don't do this, right? But guys, when you look at the actual facts of where Americans stand on the issues, and I love this new trend, and I'm very proud to be part of this new trend. And in fact, I would argue one of the trailblazers in that trend we have been as a show, right? Which is now getting people to focus on the things that unite us.
Yes, and look, at the very beginning of Trump's second term, I do think that Republicans were more draconian, and I'm talking about the base, more draconian and wanting like everyone out, mass deportations. But now I think seeing how mass deportations actually impact communities across the country, they're softening on the issue, at least based on what the polls indicate. So let's get to that.
Yeah, this is the story where I promised you a startling fact, and we're about to show it.
Okay, so here's how Americans' views on immigration have changed since Trump took office, according to polling from Gallup, okay? So the share of Americans who want immigration decreased in the United States actually dropped from 55% to just 30%. That's pretty shocking.
That's a huge drop, unbelievable.
About 4 in 10 say immigration should be kept at its current level. Only 26% say immigration should be increased. The share of Republicans saying immigration should be decreased dropped from a high of 88% to 48% in the last year?
Unbelievable.
That is unbelievable. Like, okay, I'm gonna keep it real. That's almost too unbelievable, and I'm worried that there's something wrong with the methodology. How does it go from 88% to 48%? That's insane.
Anna, this was one of the most startling news stories I've seen in a long time. The change among the right wingers is so huge among Republicans that, like Anna, I had trouble believing it until I dove further into the numbers, and it turns out they match. So, look guys, the pendulum swings, and so as we were saying, what you see in media is oftentimes a mirage, right? But what winds up happening is, this is a perfect case of the American people landing in the right place, in my opinion, okay? So in the beginning these days, meaning Biden, right? There's a lot more before that, obviously. Biden's too lax at the border. Everyone agrees, even the left agrees these days.
Do they?
Generally speaking, Democrats generally do, okay? And we do because it's true, right? And so at that point, all Americans, the numbers start rising, going, I want less immigration, less immigration, less immigration, right? And that number is huge. And then for Republicans, it gets all the way up to 88%, right? Then Trump does a pretty good job of closing the border. Okay, so that's pro-Trump, but it's also pro, hey, we're getting to a better balance. So the American people are starting to feel more comfortable because they don't see people rushing over the border, right? In the numbers that they saw before. Then Trump starts to do the mass deportations. Then you've got the guys en masse grabbing people
off the streets
in front of a Home Depot, breaking up families, no badges, thugs pulling up in vans, etc. And they start losing everybody, right? as we showed you guys here, Joe Rogan's gone. Half the podcasters are, in fact, I think almost all the podcasters that were independents, the bro guys, are all gone. They're like, we don't want this. Nobody asked for this, right? We asked you to close the border, nice job. We asked you to kick out the criminals, nice job, right? We didn't ask for go snatch up grandma,
right?
But with a bunch of thugs en masse. So now, once people see that, boom, the numbers drop like a rock, right? And the American people get to the equilibrium that they wanted. Now, this is not the equilibrium. Trump's gonna have to walk it back, right? But what they're sending a very clear message. We said close the border, we said kick out the criminals, but we didn't say hate immigrants. We didn't say that. In fact, this is a country of immigrants, and the overwhelming majority of Americans love and respect these immigrants and don't want you to ruin their lives. And a shockingly high percentage want them to become citizens.
Pathway to citizenship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a pathway is a pathway. You know, you pay your dues, you work a long time here at a super hard job for not a great rate, and then you become a citizen. That's fair. That's fair. And that's what Americans are saying now. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.